Good morning and welcome to Lit 346, The Bible as Literature. My name is Dr. Sam Hay and I'm a lecturer here at Christian Heritage College and in the School of Ministries. I've been tutoring and teaching in a range of tertiary institutions and churches and denominations over many years, and I've extensive experience as a chaplain, a teacher, tertiary educator and teacher of the Bible, sociology and history and many other subjects. I've also served as a pastor and I've completed a PhD with studies in Bible and also in contemporary society and Australian megachurches. You can email me or contact me by phone by making a time for an appointment. The prescribed texts for this unit are Robert Alter's books, The Art of Biblical Narrative and also The Art of Bible Poetry. It has been quoted by William Blake that the Bible is the great code of art. It could be called the great code of life or of the universe, as it claims to communicate a message from God, the maker of all things. Or through the authors and writers of this book, it is said that God can communicate to us, and certainly millions of people around the world say that they sense God communicating to them through these words. That is, they are words from God about the meaning of life and wisdom for life and what is needed for a successful, fruitful life. The destiny of each individual and communities and their eternal future can be found as being described and influenced by the words of this book, the Bible. Also, how to be saved and how to be born again, and not only as individuals, but as communities and nations. How to be transformed, how to be changed, how to become the people that we sense we've been called and destined to be, to flourish and be a blessing to others and to oneself. These are all communicated through this book. It is an amazing book. It's had a lot of influence. The Bible has changed many lives over the centuries, and it's valuable for us if we can understand the nature of this book and how it speaks to us. It's also been said that it's one of the great works of literature and art. It not only inspired some of the greatest paintings, writings, poems, songs, dramas, dances, and music that this world has known, it's also said to be a great work of art and literature in its own right. And those who've read the Bible say that they are better able to understand it if they can appreciate the artistic and literary nature of the Bible and the different books and sections in it. The original text of the Bible was in the Old Testament in Hebrew and Aramaic, and in the New Testament in Greek, and translations in 400 AD were into the Latin, and then in more recent times into German and English and other translations, including the King James Bible and more recent Bible translations. And these hold central positions in the Western literary tradition and the development of Western society. Other key literatures in the Western literary tradition and also Western society include Greek writings of the Iliad and Odyssey by Homer and the writings of Plato and Aristotle, and also Romans in the Latin language. And the Hebrew Christian Bible and the Greek writings, as well as Latin and other writings, provide important orienting and originating literatures for our Western culture today. That is, you can only fully understand the world in which we live when you understand these great books that have contributed to it, and particularly significantly for us, the Bible. More than a simple religious text, the Christian Bible contains a wealth of literary genres that have profoundly influenced the development of people and nations and the English language and its literature. It's important for students of Western culture to have a deep understanding of the various literary genres of the Bible and appreciating its value, not only for Christian faith, but also for the cultural imagination of the West. But also in this subject, we'll have time to reflect on the meaning and application of the Bible and its texts to lives of people, to the lives of communities, churches, the lives of societies and nations. The unit invites you to examine the different literary genres within the Bible, the different literatures of the Bible, the plots and characters, in order to investigate the place of the Bible within the literary canon, not just as one part of the canon, but as the great code, the code of life, the code of art that unlocks the inner coherence of the whole project of Western literature and culture, but also the personal meaning of one's own life. We'll also think about the way in which one's life is described in terms of a narrative and a story. And we can also look to literatures being used as therapy and being used to help people develop a sense of identity and to rewrite the narrative story of their own life from weaker, more failed narrative storylines into more appropriate and more fruitful storylines. That is, some people can see literature and story as therapy. They can also see it in pastoral care. They can also see it as applying in education, in business, in so many areas. The concept of a narrative, a story such as we find in the Bible, and the way in which it's applied to life can be explored. And there's a lot of research that's been done in this area that we can look at in the weeks ahead. This unit will focus on the genres of narrative and story, as well as the less common narrative of poetry and song. And we'll also look at wisdom and Torah and prophecy and apocalyptic literature, parables and epistles. In looking at narrative and story, we'll look at the major plot line. That is, what's the background context in which a narrative or story develops. We'll look at the tensions, particularly the tension between good and evil within a story, and the way in which these tensions reach a crisis point and they're resolved within stories. And then we'll look also at poetry and the way in which this less common literature, we don't use it in every day when we go to the shops or speak to one another. It's more the language of sports coaches. It's the language that we sing when we're very nationalistic and we sing a national anthem. It's a language that stirs us. It's a language that moves us more deeply within. And we'll look at poetry such as the Psalms and the way in which this can have benefits for people and also for the identity of people and their sense of growth and transformation. In the unit outline, in the 10 weekly lectures and tutorials, plus also 3 additional weeks in which we can have additional consultations, we'll begin by looking first week at the biblical narrative, the introduction to the unit, fraught with background, reading the Bible as literature. And your textbooks describe the way in which the Greeks often give detailed background of motivations, and the Bible, for some reason, leaves this more open, challenging the reader to think more deeply what's going on here. And that some have argued that this is an educational method to challenge the reader to think, to be transformed and changed as they work through the issues. In the second week, we'll look at Genesis and sacred history and the beginnings of prose fiction in the Bible, with a particular focus on the first few chapters, the origination of the world, the universe in which we live, and then Genesis 12, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the origination of the Hebrew nation. And then we'll spend some time looking further at chapters 37 through to 50, Joseph, and other narratives towards the close of the book of Genesis. In the third week, we'll look at Exodus and characters and characterization and irony. In the fourth week, we'll look further at narratization, characterization, and dialogue. And then in weeks 5 onwards, we'll start to look at poetry and parallelisms and the Psalms. In week 7, we'll look at tragedy and irony in the book of Job and truth. We'll also, in week 8, look further at truth through wisdom, poetry, and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. And then in the last 2 of the 10 weeks, we'll look at the Gospels and the New Testament and the way in which the Old Testament literature contributes to the New Testament literature and the meaning overall. In terms of learning outcomes, we begin by seeking to communicate to the students opportunity to develop skills and knowledge for understanding the Bible, both as a historical text, which is the background context of the history of the book, as well as a literary text. We'll look at the origins of the biblical narrative in Genesis 1 to 11 in prehistory. Then we'll move through to the development of civilizations from the Copper Age and Bronze Age through to the Iron Age around 1000 BC, and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in 2000 BC through to the time of Moses and the Kings, 1400 to 1000 BC, and then culminating in the peak of the kingdom under Kings David and Solomon, about 1000 BC, followed by the loss of 10 or 11 tribes to Assyria in 722 BC, and the captivity of the final tribe of Judah in Babylon, 586 BC, and their return 70 years later through to the New Testament times. This historical setting has shaped our worldview, and so knowing something of the background history can help us to appreciate the content of the Old Testament and the ways in which this has influenced our worldview. The hope of restoration in the Old Testament books contributes to the Exodus, the leaving of Egypt and the moving towards the Promised Land, contributes to the return from Babylon, leaving Babylon behind and returning to the Promised Land. It contributes to the message of Jesus looking forward to future hope, and many throughout history have looked to Scripture to stir that message of hope and salvation that's communicated there through the biblical words. So we'll look at the historical context, but we'll also look at the literary nature of the biblical writings in terms of plot and narrative and character and how these come together, and how you and I can use these in our own writing, in our own thinking, that we can use these in our own call to be creative in poetry and literature and other creative arts that we may seek to find expression and growth in. Secondly, we'll seek to demonstrate a knowledge and understanding of the origins and the reception of the Bible from its origins in Hebrew and Greek, and we'll teach you a little as to how to find copies of Hebrew and Greek interlinear Bibles and the meanings of the words through to New Testament times, and then through history, giving us the English language Bibles, beginning with Tyndale and King James, and then moving through to more recent translations. We'll spend some time reflecting on the Bible as we have it, these books collected together, and as we have it for us in English, and how this connects the ancient world to the contemporary world that we'll live in. And we'll look at some of the background context that have shaped the words and ideas that we find in the Bible. We'll also seek to develop skills to evaluate and analyse literary genres, to reflect on the language and imagery, and to develop skills to communicate at an appropriate tertiary standard. So I encourage you to do some background reading, to look through the Moodle website and to become familiar with the material that we're going to cover, and to give some thought as to, out of these 10 weekly topics, which topic would you like to do an assignment on and explore further? Which topic would you like to choose for your 2 forum posts? Which topic would you like to do your narrative essay on? And which one would you like to do your poetry assignment on? There's some great books here to engage with. And I encourage you, this is also an opportunity to be open to God to speak to you, to God to speak through you, to develop skills, to understand what God is saying to us through His Word, the Bible, and the ways in which we can communicate these insights to others, informed by a greater understanding of the narrative and poetic nature of the writings of Scripture. I look forward to working with you in this subject, and I can be contacted at any stage if you want to go further. But I also look forward to interacting with you in the 3 hours that we work together each week on a Monday. Let's make a start, and let's keep working through the project that we have before us in this subject. Thank you. Document Zoom. So that's where